All right. Hopefully everyone can hear me. It's been a while since I've done a live stream. Just checking the audio here. It looks like it's pretty good. I think we're all set. Well, welcome everyone to the live stream. I used to do this weekly, so I might forget some of the steps. If you're new to these live streams, what I try to do is just learn the industry news as it pertains to pharmacy and informatics. As I read through it and find the news for myself. So usually this is like something that, those of us in informatics should be doing, is just keeping up to date with news and things like that. And on these live streams, I try to read through some of them that I find interesting and share it with the broader audience. And then at the same time, also answer any type of questions that I get along the way, especially ones that have been piling up in some of my social media buckets. So definitely going to do that. Let me start by sharing my screen. Let's see here. Oops. Usually what I would do is start off with any type of pharmacy relevant news because, I come from a pharmacy background, definitely want to make sure I'm kept up to date on pharmacy news. And one of my favorites to review is the ASHP daily briefing that comes out every day on weekdays to see what's leading the news. So let's take a gander at what we find today. So let's see. Leading the news, Biden administration launches new monkeypox vaccination strategy. One second here. Biden administration will begin sending out tens of thousands of vaccine doses to clinics nationwide in an effort to control a record U.S. monkeypox outbreak that many experts say is far larger than the official count of 306 cases. This vaccination strategy, which officials characterize as part of a broader push for more testing and public awareness of monkeypox, will focus on distributing doses to states with the highest number of confirmed cases of the disease. Also, officials said they were broadening access to the vaccines. CNN reports the government will make 56,000 of the 64,000 Jynneos vaccine doses available to states in phase 1 of the rollout. Furthermore, public health officials are also considering whether to use a second older type of vaccine called ACAM. Admittedly, I have not really been following along in the news regarding monkeypox. 306 cases, so it looks like they're predicting more. A bit scary, I don't know how this is going to pan out, but probably something I should be keeping my eye out on about. Moving on, let's see what else is in here. New policy approved yesterday by the ASHP Board of Directors asserts patients' rights to assess comprehensive reproductive healthcare services, including care for preconception, conception, post-conception, and termination of pregnancies. Policy also affirms that healthcare workers should be free to provide needed care guided by their individual beliefs without fear of retribution. ASHP delegates voted affirmatively on this policy as a new business item earlier this month during the 2022 summer meeting and exhibition in Phoenix. Certainly very relevant with the most recent news coming out about some Supreme Court. Definitely something to read. Let's see. Next, COVID news. FDA advisors endorse updated COVID-19 vaccines for the fall. Washington Post, it's time to update coronavirus vaccines to better match the variants currently driving the pandemic outside, experts told the FDA on Tuesday. The panel endorsed an updated Omicron vaccine by a 19-2 vote. FDA is expected to issue a final decision on a new vaccine formula in the coming days. Vote paves the way for the FDA to push manufacturers to make reformulated boosters in time for the Biden administration to offer them later this year, before an expected winter surge of the virus. Reports Pfizer, Moderna, and Novavax presenting data at the evening. All three have been testing versions of the vaccines updated to combat the BA Omicron variant. This is news to me. I mean, I guess it shouldn't be surprising that they're updating their booster vaccines, but Seems like the trajectory we may be going is just continuously getting boosters. So we have some comments in the chat. Jung says, woo, it's Dr. Fung. I'm a huge fan. Thanks for tuning in, Jung. Dennis says, can we get Brian's voice on my GPS? Sounds like a troll right there. Let's move on. Anything else interesting? European Medicines Agencies begins review of smallpox vaccine for use against monkeypox. Can't say I'm particularly intrigued by that kind of news right now. So I'm going to skip on. Let's see what else is interesting. Health coverage, CMS release FAQs on No Surprises Act implementation. About balanced billing and notice on consent prohibitions. The law prohibits non-participating providers and emergency facilities from billing patients for more than their applicable cost-sharing amounts for certain services. I think I've seen a couple of this and I've talked about it in the past, but it didn't seem like anything new coming out of there. Government watchdogs call for greater congressional oversight of Medicare managed care plans. Not interesting. Health insurance premiums absorb high share of average annual income. Health insurance premiums absorb a high share of the average American's annual income and must compete with other essential expenses to be a priority in consumers' minds, a study from NICE-RX found. According to the results, health insurance was the living expense that absorbed the third highest share of the average annual income. It's slightly interested in this one. Let me see if there's like some more things I can gather. Let me share my other screen that I just pulled up. So each of these articles, obviously, when you're interested, you can always click into it and see more things about it. Let me skim through here. Researchers set the average income in the US as $60,000. Rent has the highest share, consuming over a quarter of the average annual income. Childcare came next. And health insurance took up on average 10.69%, or $6,400 of the average annual income. This one's just surprising to me because I had a couple conversations with friends recently about just the cost of healthcare. And I think those of us who work in healthcare organizations may be a bit spoiled on this because I've always found that healthcare premiums are not as expensive for those of us who perhaps are unemployed or employed by a hospital organization, because I have not paid probably more than $50 a month on premiums when I've been working with healthcare organizations. But then I hear my friends who could be paying hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars a month on health insurance, and it kind of blows my mind. So this might be something I might dig into later to just get a better sense of that. To my understanding, I've always thought that if you were employed in general, that a lot of this is subsidized. But I also have a HSA, so I have the highest deductible, lowest premium plans, which probably makes a big difference. Let's go back to the other thing to see if there's anything else that's worth mentioning in this daily briefing. Health business. Amazon drugstore chains begin limiting purchase of back to the abortion type laws. Amazon and some large drugstore chains, including Rite Aid and CVS, began this week limiting purchases of emergency contraception to 3 pills per customer. It's going to be very interesting to see, how the new laws are going to be implemented across the different states, and especially how organizations that sell drugs will implement it. Walgreens scrap plans to sell UK boots. Novartis a restructuring plan. Whoa, this one's interesting. I think cuts, which has been a big topic in general across like jobs, especially in the tech market. This one, I think, is one of the first ones I've seen from pharmacy groups. Novartis says restructuring could lead to 8,000 job cuts from global workforce. So on Tuesday, announcing a restructuring program could lead to 8,000 cuts, or about 7.4% of its global workforce, including up to 1,400 in Switzerland. These job cuts are part of a restructuring program the Swiss pharmaceutical group announced in April, targeting savings of at least $1 billion by 2024. It's a scary time to be in the job market, especially if you're like hopping around at this time because of restructuring and tighter budgets and looming talks of recessions and stuff like that, if we're not already in one. Okay, nothing else interesting here, so I'm going to move on over to talking about informatics news. And unfortunately, I lost my AMIA daily downloads that I've been getting after I switched jobs. It's probably still tagged to my old work email, but have no fear. One of the ones I've been enjoying quite a bit recently is the news coming from Health IT News, which is also daily, free, and easy to access. So those of you in informatics, definitely recommend checking that out if you are hungry for Health IT News. But let's see. Let's go through this to see if there's anything interesting here. Computer-assisted AI reduce colorectal cancer, support for medication, abortion, travel, and privacy, but there's no magic bullet to ruling. Time for Congress to change health privacy rules. I wonder if this was the article I read yesterday. Oh, it is. It is. And maybe I'll just share a brief about this. Let me go ahead and share my screen for that window. So this is an article yesterday. I made a post about this as well, but I don't know why they're reposting this. This specific article came out yesterday in Health IT News, and it looks like they shared it again today. But it was the first time I really thought about how the new laws, especially as it pertains to abortions, would be utilized, or how it will impact those of us in informatics. And this was probably the first article I saw yesterday that made me go into a deep dive of all the other things that are going on and discussions around this. But basically, if you read my post yesterday, is this article by Carol and Frank just kind of made the argument that reproductive data is not very well protected and can be easily found, and that they are suggesting stronger types of protections like those in the substance abuse regulations, and making it stricter for law enforcement to access medical records, and just additional guardrails around commercial vendors. Also pointing out that they thought that Congress's current efforts were also not sufficient. So it was just super interesting. And, those of us, again, in informatics is going to encounter this not only for reproductive data, but just data in general as we become more interoperable. I'm not going to say too much more on that. Let's go back to our news. Let's see. HIMSS case studies collection highlights APAC first. Why leading with evidence is necessary for digital therapeutics. Addressing challenges with DEI programs at health organizations. How technology is accelerating a healthcare revolution. Is that it? I have to say, like, some of the titles are not very intriguing for me to catch or jump into to read more about. So what I'm going to do is actually pivot now. This is actually a good time, since I try to keep these to 30 minutes. I don't want to spend too much time on it. I'll spend the last 15 minutes kind of on Q&A. Let me stop this. And to make these flow a little better, I went ahead and compiled a couple of questions over the last few days that I received on some of my social media channels. So I'll go ahead and get started there. Let's see. So if you are in the live stream, feel free to leave some questions in the chat. This is definitely part of the time that I'm hoping to utilize to answer live questions, but also different questions that I get that I just can't get to on my social media. So let's start with the very first question. And I have some of the questions append it to this chat so I can display it to make it easier. Let's go ahead and do that. The very first question, it was on one of my YouTube videos about the AMIA Health Informatics Certification, or AHIC. And the question is, can you share your AMIA experience? The question is a bit vague here. I'm not sure if it's referring to the certification or just AMIA in general. I guess I'll comment on both very briefly. The first is, my experience with AMIA in general has been extremely positive. The people in the community are very intelligent. It's been fun interacting with them. It's like a different world because I lived more in the clinical informatics side, and many of these individuals in AMIA are from the biomedical informatics side. So just very interesting to learn about their perspectives and expertise. If you're referring to the AHIC certification, I did not end up taking it. I tried to study for it originally, but it just got a bit overwhelming, the amount of study I was putting in for it. So did not end up pursuing it. I know a couple of my other colleagues did. David Aguirre, I believe, did. Scott Nelson, I believe, did. And I think one other person, I can't remember. But yeah, if you're looking for individuals that have some experience with that, definitely would reach out to those two individuals, both of whom are well-respected informatics pharmacists in the community. Let's move on to the next question, which is, I believe, a troll question from my good friend Kevin Yee on my video about, I don't remember what the video was about, but he asked, should I get my CPR training? Will this help me get a job in this saturated pharmacy market? I think those of us who know Kevin Yee and Paul Tran know that CPR certifications are important in the world of pharmacy. So answer is yes, you should definitely get your CPR training. Let's move on to another question here. This one was on one of my videos about EPIC certifications. I can't remember. So they say, hi, Brian, I'm transitioning from a respiratory therapist to an EPIC Optime analyst for the hospital system I work at. Do you know what the average pay range for a brand new Optime analyst would look like? I'm having a hard time finding a good pay range for this position online. I'm not certified. They are sending me to EPIC to get the certification, which is all virtual. Now, I guess thanks to EPIC. Maybe an easy question because I don't know what Optime analysts make, especially ones that come from RT. I had a couple of RT friends that I worked with previously that joined ClinDoc, and I do have a few Optime friends. My assumption would be that it varies a lot, and it based on geographic location, your institution, and the specific position and seniority. If I were to take a wild guess, I would probably think it's like between 60 to 100K, somewhere along those lines. But I'm not entirely sure. But check out Glassdoor is one of the things that I would suggest, or just talk to other folks who are Optime analysts. Let's move on to next question about EPIC certifications. Do EPIC certifications expire? Yes, they do. They used to, I believe, not really expire much. It used to be that you just take continuing education, like these quizzes and stuff. But 2 or 3 years ago, they implemented these like continuing education experience or something. They're CEEs. Basically, every certification you get, you have to renew them after 3 years. And if you don't, then they expire. Sometimes EPIC chooses to retire their certifications too, for whatever reason. And in that case, obviously, they would expire. We have a question in the chat from I'm the Teapot. Says, hi, how can I get rich in pharmacy? Assuming this might be a troll question, but if you're a pharmacist and you get a job, then it's a decently paying salary. I guess it depends on your definition of rich. I think if you got a job as a pharmacist anywhere, that the pay is relatively good. But again, it depends on your definition of rich. Okay, I don't have the rest of the questions pre-appended to the post, or do I? Let me actually see. Oh, I do. Here's the next question. Another question on the YouTube video is, what programming languages would you recommend someone to know for pharma informatics? So this is a pretty common question, and I think it really depends. And my perspective on this kind of changes quite often, I feel. So I'll say a couple of things. The first thing is that if you're interested in pharmacy informatics, that in general, I don't necessarily recommend any programming language at all, because I don't think that most informatics pharmacists need to know how to program. The most important thing is knowing what we as pharmacists do in the day-to-day workflows, and that goes for anything within informatics. Knowing the workflows itself is probably the most important thing. The second thing is I'll comment on is, if you're looking for a reporting position in pharmacy informatics, then programming languages or just technical languages in general can become more important, and that would be determined by the role itself, because report writing obviously requires you to know more technical skills. And so in that case, my general perception now is that learning a bit of SQL is probably one of the best, first, easiest languages to know and helpful in any circumstance. So SQL will probably be my first recommendation, and it usually dives deeper down into R and Python. Again, that would depend. My general anecdotal experience right now is that if you're interested in like public health or or data manipulation and data analyses, that'll probably be more R. And if you're looking for just non-data analyses type roles, then it's Python. But I see R used more so in public health groups, and it's also free. And then Python used in like more for-profits, but that's not really like saying much. It's just observations. Mui says, what keeps you interested in informatics? And hello from Orlando. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. What keeps me interested? I think informatics in general, what keeps me interested is I'll say two things to be brief. First is that flexibility in the job. It is such a flexible job. You have specific deadlines that you need to hit, but beyond that, how you spend your time is more so up to you. So coming from like barely ever seeing family or friends because of working holidays or on call or on the weekends, I can now work from home, be around family, see family and friends during holidays. That's one big one. And the other thing is that informatics, the day-to-day is never the same. There's always some weird random question that you get, and it's like, I don't know the answer, but I'm interested in figuring out what the answer is. So informatics is very fun. It's different. It's like you're solving a different problem every day. So I think that's one of the two big things for me. I'm the Teapot says, I got a job, but I only get a 2.5% flat raise each year. Is that bad? I try to be brief on this. We can talk a long time about this. The first thing I'll say is I think that's typical in many different companies, a flat, maybe like 1 to 3% raise. Somehow that became the norm. You'll see plenty of articles saying that's not enough. That's just became norm, and I don't know. People accept it because it's the norm, not that it's correct. And then nowadays, it's like, I think especially with those in the younger generation, if you want to get a raise and you want to make more money, the way you do it is just you job hunt, and there's a lot of articles that talk about that. Every couple of years, just hop jobs and you get higher and higher salaries, 15, 20, 50% raises, something like that. Yeah, inflation is 8%. I mean, that's not every year. So this just happens to be a really bad outlier year. But yeah, so if you want to look at it compared to inflation, then this year is not great. I think that if you're looking to make money or make a lot of money, in your case, you're asking about getting rich, then it's about moving jobs or getting promoted. But moving jobs seems to be one of the biggest things that I gather from just reading different articles online. All right, let's move on to another question here. I think I have two more, and then, oh, actually a couple more here. They're not listed, but I will. Let me see if I can post it to see if this works. Yeah, this one's, I'll just post part of it because it's too long to be posted. There it is. Okay. So this other video, this other question I got was about MPH programs. I made a video about Emory's MPH program because I got accepted to that one. Seems like this person's stuck between Emory and Cornell's program. And they say they are both good and don't know which one to pick. I think when it came down to this, this is not really a question. I'm just commenting on it. I made kind of a pro cons list for each of the programs I was interested in, and just picked the one that offered the most. And one that comes up is Emory's has an amazing public health informatics program. Arguably the best because it's tied to CDC. And I ended up foregoing that for Hopkins MPH program. And part of that is because even though I'm in informatics, I didn't want to be pigeonholed into informatics. And Hopkins gave a broader opportunity to explore other areas and not be pigeonholed into public health informatics. But that's something that I thought was important to me. So I think just making pros and cons of what you care about most can help you make a decision. We only have a couple minutes left, so we're going to start wrapping up. But a question I got here, actually, this is not a question, it's a comment, but a very interesting comment because I know a lot of my newer subscribers have been talking about personal finance. I'm just going to go ahead and read this because I'm sure a lot of people have differing opinions on this, including myself. So I made a video about me pursuing FatFire last year, and I talked about retiring early and using the 25 times your annual expense rule to determine how much money you need to get saved. And this comment is a response to that. So this person says, great video. I've been putting out some videos lately on how I think people in their 30s are underestimating their expenses by using this 25 times expense rule, because you are not going to want to live the same lifestyle in your 60s you are living now. This isn't meant to be a criticism, just an observation. I'm 49, so I'm an old dude. You're not old, man. And see what my spending looks like compared to 20 years ago. New sub. I look forward to following along on your journey. I think a couple of comments that I'm trying to think about right now. The first comment is maybe that it is definitely a underestimation. I've got other comments from folks, great feedback and criticism about how, pride doesn't account for inflation, potentially increased taxes. There's just so many other things it doesn't account for, even including, future changes in terms of getting married, what your status is, if you have kids, all these other things that are not factored into that. And I think for me personally, the 25 times rule is just meant as a foundation. And you start there and then you start adding your caveats. But it is certainly by no means a great way to be saying this is the amount of money you need to retire. That's that. I haven't put much more thought into what the gap should be or what buffer rooms I should have, but it gave me a good idea to start planning towards something, knowing that I need to save like, I don't know, $80,000 a year to get to my numbers. Is like, oh man, I'm not hitting that mark at all. It's just like those kind of questions that come into mind to know if like, are you on the right track? Are you not? But yeah, super interesting. I know a lot of people critique the 25 times expense rule. I personally don't think that it is a very salient marker. It's just a place to start. All right, I'm going to move on to I'm already past time. Maybe two more questions here. I found a couple from my Instagram from last week that I'll just read. Oh, actually, maybe I'm not going to read these because this is kind of a repeat. So someone asked me, stumbled upon your YouTube channel and interested in the informatics side of pharmacy. Is there a particular language you code in or recommend knowing? I kind of answered that earlier, but SQL, number one, and then R or Python, kind of depending on your circumstance. For me personally, when I was looking at the job descriptions, usually they were preferentially interested in either R or Python. Certainly helps to know both, but it's very obvious. Like you start seeing trends in what types of industries wanted to see more R and what wanted to see more Python. So SQL, Python, R. Another question here is, how did you pivot from pharmacy and was a pharmacy degree needed? How do you recommend joining the space you're working for? So I believe this was an Instagram post about my job transition recently, where, basically I've kind of left pharmacy, if you will. I'm not in a traditional pharmacy space. So there's two questions here. How did you pivot? It's a great time for a plug. I made a course on this, which I will post in the chat in case anyone is interested. But basically pivoting out of pharmacy into like a biotech space, which is what I'm in now, or health tech space, is very different. And so I made a course on this that I posted in the link. Check that out. I think it kind of highlights some of the things. There's a lot of free intro content that I put out there, so you can see if you're interested. And if you don't like the course at all, you can just request a refund. No questions asked. So I think that's one thing. How did you pivot? There's a lot to say about that. Just radical change in mindset and how you approach job seeking. For my position, was a pharmacy degree needed? No. I think they were looking for anyone that had just kind of a clinical experience. So any type of healthcare background is probably very helpful. Healthcare background plus some type of data-oriented background. And I was very interested in interoperability. So I think I was a fit there. And then how do you recommend joining this space? Probably just checking out the course. I think it's hard to explain. I know a couple of folks, actually, I wish I remember their name. Some people wrote some amazing articles talking about how to pivot from like a clinical role into health tech. And from the sounds of their experience, it's definitely not the easiest of transitions. And even talking to different people, that have tried, it's not the easiest transition. So maybe I'll create a couple posts about this to make things more public about my experience. But check out the course is my final plug on that. I think that is going to be, I have a couple of shout outs. Yes, as I wrap up, before I wrap up this video, I know I do a lot more questions, just try to get through some of the questions that I don't get to answer. But I do want to highlight some of the comments I get where people leave comments, and I want to make sure I start to acknowledge those people too, because those comments always mean a lot to me. So I made a video on why pharmacy informatics, my story for the LinkedIn Creator Accelerator program a couple months ago. And I had 3 comments that I wanted to shout out from the folks there. One of which is from Will the Nerd. I'm assuming this is Will. Will says, poignant and well written. Thank you for your story from a grateful pharmacy student who's been following your content for a while. So, I always appreciate, and I'm also surprised when people follow my content at times because, I don't get to interact with everyone, and it's just really appreciative. I feel really appreciated, and I am appreciative when people consume the content. So thanks for the comment, Will. Another comment here from Jessica on the same video, and she says, "Thank you for sharing your story, Brian. I love the format of this video as well, and how you touched upon healthcare burnout, a topic near and dear to my heart." But Jessica was my PGY2 co-resident, so shout out to Jessica for that comment. And then the last comment I want to highlight is from Betty. She says, "I was deeply moved by your experience. I felt your genuine desire to help improve the lives of others. I'm so sorry about what happened with your grandmother. I hope that you've been able to find some comfort knowing that your hard work helps other patients every single day. Thank you for sharing your story." But thanks, Betty, for the comments. Really appreciate it. I think, especially being a content creator, I think it's really important to be authentic in sharing our thoughts and feelings. And certainly in that video, it's fairly evident that a lot of the paths I've chosen in healthcare stemmed heavily from my experience with my grandma. So thanks for the comment. I really appreciate it. So that kind of wraps up this video. Let me know if you guys have questions down in the future. I'm going to keep trying to do these as often as I can, usually weekly, maybe a little less, and get through questions because it's easier to answer questions like this, and also always fun to engage with people in a live audience. But thanks, guys, for tuning in. I will see you all next time, and happy Wednesday. Bye.